Shalom, I'm Shannon, and I want to invite you to join me as we explore how faith meets real life and all of its plot twists. Welcome everyone to the Heritage Podcast. I'm your host Shannon, and we're joined by my really good friend Jonny today. Welcome, Jonny.
Thanks.
I'm excited for you to be here. We are in a really fun holiday season, including our birthdays.
Yes, it's been a blast.
We've had so much fun this week. We also celebrated Purim, which is like the Jewish Halloween. Every year it's a costume party. This
and we
year,
had an 80s party this year. It was super fun. We had a DJ. We were dancing to 80s music, and there was a beautiful charcuterie board.
Oh, it was so
Jonathan
good.
shared some really cool things about like Purim and like how we're still fighting anti-Semitism and how God protects us.
And how God has been faithful in the story of
Israel.
Esther, and He is faithful for us believers today.
Yes.
Which is something that we could really hold on to, because we're also going to talk about our experience in Israel on October 7th. The two of us were there, sort of on the same trip, but when the attack started, we were in separate places. Mm-hmm. We'll get all into that, but first I want to hear a little bit of intro about you and your faith journey and how you found faith in Yeshua, being a Jewish believer. What did that look like for you?
Well, for me, everyone has a different story in our movement. I actually met Yeshua when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
I was at a Franklin Graham event.
Cool.
And that's when it clicked, and I was like, oh, I completely understand. Jesus died on the cross for my sins.
Wow.
And I can be born again. I like understood what all of that meant finally. So I
finally at 8. That's
yeah,
very
I
young.
know,
Yeah, very young finally.
But I mean, I was in Sunday school like all the time. I grew up in the evangelical church. It was just always, I heard about Jesus every week, but I didn't realize what He did until I was 8.
Wow.
And then I was baptized, and I grew up in an evangelical home knowing that I was Jewish, but we didn't really observe because my grandma was the first in our family that was Jewish, and she converted to Christianity. But she didn't, back then it didn't really exist to be Messianic.
Okay, so she didn't continue the traditions
not
and
at all.
cultural. That's so interesting. So I grew up, I have been a believer my whole life. I have always known Yeshua. It started with knowing Him more as Abba, Father. Before I could comprehend, His finished work on the cross and everything, but I knew Him as my dad. And that was really, really special to have that relationship with Him at an age before I could really even comprehend it. I knew Him.
That's
but
cool.
I've always grown up in a Jewish believing home, and we observed Passover and the other holidays, Hanukkah. So
yeah, but I had to learn that on my own.
You learned that on your own. When was that, as an adult?
So when I was in college, I came across the Bible verse about Passover, actually, and it said, you and your descendants should observe this forever. And have a feast forever.
Yes.
And I was like, well, that doesn't say until the Messiah comes. That says forever. And it really impacted me over the years to start learning how to incorporate this into my faith in Yeshua by adding these Jewish holidays that are so meaningful. And I believe it's just a really amazing form of worship.
And Jesus said it, right? He says, if you love me, you'll obey my commands.
Yeah.
And when the Bible says for all time, or forever, that means forever.
Forever.
That means no matter what. And we know that because Yeshua Himself embodied that. Like, He practiced these.
And
so
the early church did.
And all of the
like
writers of the New
There
Testament
were a lot of
all
Jews in
Jewish.
the early church,
Exactly.
yes. All of the disciples, the apostles. So, yeah, it's, a lot of people in the early church were Jewish, and the traditions were lost over time. But there's this new movement in the Messianic world to revive this and bring the Jewish traditions back that were removed because of anti-Semitism for so long in the church.
Exactly. There's been such a divide, which I'm sure we'll get much deeper into on later episodes. But I just want to go back to the point where when we meet people, we say that we're Jewish believers, and people just can't understand that. They're like, what do you mean you're Jewish and you believe in Jesus? Like, how does that work? Well, we believe in the whole Bible. And like you just said, the early church was all Jewish. And the Old Testament, the New Testament, it's a complete story of Jesus. There are mentions of Him all throughout the Old Testament, foreshadows, prophecies, and everything. So when I went to Bible school, so this was post-college grad, I went back to school, And I would ask the professors and the pastors, why don't Christians celebrate these holidays? And there really wasn't an answer. So that got me even more excited to press into our Jewish heritage and to be part of this congregation, which is just so powerful to be around other believers and to celebrate everything together. And like you said, it's a movement and it is growing. And
yes, and there's people that are Jewish that have always observed Judaism, but then they find Yeshua and they are like, well, I don't want to become a Baptist. I want to keep up my Jewish heritage.
Exactly.
And they could just stay Jewish and believe Jesus is the Messiah.
Yes.
And then there's people that are like me that are evangelicals that have Jewish heritage that want to learn how to do it. And there's even people that are Gentiles in the Christian church that want to start observing Jewish traditions. So
and we also have interfaith married couples who maybe have different beliefs, but this is somewhere that they can come together and their children can grow up and really embrace both.
It's very diverse, especially here in LA. And I've had friends that come in and they say, this is so refreshing how diverse your community is.
It's been incredible to be part of. And just since I've pressed into the roots more and learned more in this community, I have just grown so much in my faith, in my walk with the Lord, and in my love for Israel and the Jewish people. Which brings me to our next topic about how we were both in Israel on October 7th. We were there for a wedding, and there were about 40 of us, and we were kind of split up through the country, and we were in different towns. You were in Tel Aviv.
I was in Tel Aviv.
Correct. I was in Galilee. So what did that morning look like for you when you woke up to the news?
There was someone the night before that his name is John, and he's actually from the UK. And he said the night before he was praying, and he said, God, just protect us from missiles.
Whoa.
Like it just came to him, and he knew. It's like he knew.
Wow.
Like he had a prophetic word, and he prayed against missiles from harming us.
What did you think?
I was thinking, okay, that's really weird and kind of creepy. I'm like, are you getting a word from the Lord? I literally thought that. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to just pray and go to bed. And at 5 a.m, there were sirens and someone pounded on my door. And I was like, is something going on? And like, it's funny because there were these big industrial blinds and I thought they were missile blinds. So I shut them. I thought that, because my brother had these ones on his building.
They're missile blinds?
Yeah, it's like, it protects like from shrapnel coming in.
Oh my gosh.
But apparently they made fun of me the next day because they weren't. But I just I shut them thinking that's how I would be safe.
Okay.
And I went back to bed.
You went back to bed?
And
you slept like knowing that missiles were landing all around you?
I didn't know, because I was like, that could be an ambulance. Like, I didn't really know. But anyway, in the morning, they were like, I cannot believe you didn't wake up. You didn't come down to the bunker.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what?
Wow.
So the next day, we were in and out of the bunkers all day. And it's actually amazing how much peace I had through that. Like,
That's
God
incredible.
really gave me a lot of peace. And I'm sure you can attest to the fact that it really inspired your faith, like going through that. But
oh my gosh.
I ended up, long story short, like finding a flight out the next day on El Al.
Wow.
And it was actually miraculous because I missed my flight, but the manager of the airline like literally came up. I walked in, I went right into the airport and I told the security guard what happened. He called up the manager. She caught me in front of like 400 people.
Wow.
And got me on another flight.
You got out.
Yeah.
I had a very different experience. So I was there for another 4 days, and when I woke up in the morning to the news, we were in Galilee. I was part of a group. We were in Galilee, and I immediately, myself and one other person out of the 30, we were like, we need to get out. We need to get on a flight. We need to get on a yacht from Haifa to Cyprus or anything that we can do. Everything was canceled. There was no option. We could not get from Galilee to Tel Aviv. The whole group was going to Jerusalem, which was closer, but it was also closer
but it's
to
also
the attacks.
scary because
it's scary.
Yeah.
So we were like, what do we do? Do we just say just 2 of us here in Galilee? What if attacks come from the north, which eventually they did? And we had to make that call. Okay, well, this was our safest option, and we really had to press into the peace of the Holy Spirit and wisdom of keeping up with the news and reaching out to people who knew a little bit more about the severity of the situation. So I personally was terrified the entire time. I mean, hearing the bombs go and the missiles and everything going off.
I'll never forget it, like the sound of the missiles.
Well, what's amazing to me is that the scriptures came alive in a whole new way. When Psalm 91 says, I will not fear the terror of the night, I never understood what that meant. Or like, I just kind of read that like, oh, okay, like, I won't fear. But when I was hearing terror all night long, every single night, and just trapped and wanting to go home and not being able to, and not knowing if really I would ever be able to, I clung to those verses like never before, and trusted that the Lord is my refuge and He is my strength and He will satisfy me with long life. And that's really what gave me peace, because in the natural circumstances, it wasn't looking good.
Right. Yeah, I know there's the passage in Psalms that says, as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And then it goes on to talk about dining in the midst of your enemies when you're being attacked. I felt the Lord tell me, like, in between sirens, I ran to the grocery store and got
oh my gosh, you did.
I got like pasta and salad, enough for like maybe 2 dozen people, just in case. And that night, all these families came over, and I ended up cooking for everybody.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And we were dining in between the sirens going off and going into the bunker. We had to go in like twice. Like the food was probably cold. I can't remember, but honestly, it was like really special to be with them during that and see how peaceful they were. It inspired me to really just have faith in the middle of all of that.
That's amazing that you were surrounded by believers. I was not. So I mean, our group was, but then when my friend and I, we were the only 2 that were really serious about getting out, we were dining at the King David Hotel, and we would like eat half of our meal, and then we had to run into the bomb shelter, and we came back and finished our meal.
The bougie bunker.
The bougie bunker. Yeah, it was
you
very,
would be in a bougie
very
bunker.
nice, very nice bunker. But everybody in the shelter with us, everybody was terrified, including the hotel staff and
when the staff
locals,
is
and that,
scared. That's scary.
when I knew. I even met a woman who was from New York, and she was covered in diamonds and like super glamorous, and she was like, I have 26 flights booked, like one of them will go through. She's like, they have to. She's like, I paid for them, they have to. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so funny. Like, not funny, but yeah, no matter what money could buy, it wasn't safety. It wasn't assured.
Honestly,
it wasn't
we
guaranteed.
didn't even know the gravity. Like, I remember I didn't know what was going on. I heard there was like that people invaded the South, and that they went into the kibbutz, and something about a music festival, but I didn't really know yet, because like it wasn't in the news yet what happened.
Exactly.
Like the severity of what happened.
What I knew is that it was very serious, and all the flights were canceled. There was no way of getting out. So we did.
But it was scary to hear that Hamas had made it into the country, and they're still
totally
loose.
Scary.
They're loose. Like, what if they make it up to Tel Aviv? I didn't know. And I heard missiles exploding outside. One of them landed on the street that I was staying on. Like 2 blocks down, it took out a storefront.
I can only describe it as it sounded like the 4th of July for 4 full days that I was there, until I was lucky and really blessed to get on a flight. It was like hitting the jackpot or winning the lottery to be able to get on a flight.
October 8th, that's when I left. It was like a day of, they were loading their ammo again, and so there were no missiles that day. I mean, minimal missiles.
See, I wasn't in Tel Aviv yet, which it took me like 3
you were there
days
much
to be able
longer.
to get there.
That's really scary, and it's like time.
Just nonstop, but overwhelming peace came over me. And what's funny is like we both have Jewish mothers who are very worrisome all the time. Like your mom urged
my mom
you
was
to
like
get
begging
out
for me to get out
immediately. So my mom, who worries about everything all the time, actually had peace in this moment.
Wow.
Which is how I knew it was God. Because for her to not be scared when I was terrified, this is the first time I've ever been really terrified in my entire life. And when she was like, nah, like, you're good, like, you'll get home, I was like, okay, that has to be a message from the Lord.
And yeah, I mean, I definitely felt like there was supernatural peace going on.
Exactly.
Like, especially for me during that time. But
we made it home. We're here. We're celebrating Purim.
Yes.
So when we're celebrating these holidays about the Lord's faithfulness and the deliverance of his people.
And protecting.
It becomes so much more real to us.
Yeah, his promise to keep the Jewish people.
And here we are.
Yep, and honestly, there's like a lot of meaning to that in Purim and Passover. Both holidays are like saving and preserving the Jewish people.
Passover
and thanking God for that. And he's doing that. He protects Israel today.
Yes.
And he protects us in other ways in life all the time. And it's just a good reminder to just always be thankful. And I love like remembering, writing it down. That's why keeping a prayer journal is so effective. Like, just God loves when we remember what he's done.
100%. When I look back at all of the answered prayers throughout my life, or even throughout the last week, I can truly be so grateful and understand what God does and how he is sovereign and in every single detail and working behind the scenes, even when I don't see it in the present moment, usually pretty quickly after I'll notice, because we remember what he's done and how far he's brought us. Coming up on our calendar is Passover, and we are super excited about that. Jonny, what does that look like to you to celebrate Passover through the lens of Yeshua?
When I learned about Passover, I felt so connected to it. And what I love about it is when Jesus was at the Last Supper, for people that don't know,
it was the Passover Seder.
It was a Passover Seder.
Exactly.
And Jesus said that the bread is his body, the afikomen, which represents the sacrificed lamb, and the wine represented his blood. And those are both, even the Jews acknowledge that that's a representative of the sacrificed lamb. So Jesus was saying, I'm the sacrificed lamb. All of this is right there in the Passover. So it's really special for us, the believers in Yeshua, when we get to do Passover with the rest of Israel and the Jewish people in the nations. And for us, it has like so much meaning because we know what Jesus did and that he was our final sacrifice. Once
and for all. So we never have to sacrifice goats or anything ever again. Thank God for that. But we don't dress up in costume for Passover. It's a little more of a serious holiday.
Yeah.
So speaking of Purim, I wanted to talk about what you made here.
Oh yes, going back to Purim, which we just had. I made, because I'm bougie and very LA, I made some gluten-free, low-carb hamantaschen.
This is amazing.
These cookies are traditional, and it's either supposed to be Haman's ear or his hat.
You said Haman. Okay, inside joke.
That's so funny. Yeah. So we have these noisemakers, and the kids, or adults in our case, when you're reading the story of Esther, when you go, oh, when Esther is brought up, you go, ah, and then when you say Haman or Haman, boo.
And we have hamantaschen, which is shaped like Haman's hat
or ear. We're not really sure, but
the most important part is that they are gluten-free. They are
mine
made with,
yeah. Usually it's flour and sugar.
In LA, they're gluten-free and made with almond flour and monk fruit.
Yes, and poppy seeds and butter, organic butter, of course.
These. Of course, organic
Irish butter.
Yeah, the best kind, the Kerrygold.
Yes, Kerrygold.
Well, cheers. And thanks for joining us. And we're looking forward to recapping Passover on our next episode.